This is CBC Nova Scotia News.
Missing children investigation. RCMP collect trail cam footage in the case of Lily and Jack Sullivan.
Pat Stay trial. A witness places the accused at the same bar where the battle rapper was stabbed.
And Fish Tracker, how this big wheel is keeping tabs on young salmon as they head to sea.
Well, this recent stretch of weather has felt more like March or April than late May, and we have an early spring-like storm on the way. Wind, rain, cooler temperatures. The full details are just ahead.
RCMP are remaining tight-lipped about the investigation into the disappearance of two young Nova Scotia children.
But a resident that lives near Lily and Jack Sullivan's home says she's been asked by investigators for her trail camera footage spanning days before they were reported missing. Nicholas Seguin has our top story tonight.
Melissa Scott's trail cameras might contain clues about the disappearance of Lily and Jack Sullivan. RCMP asked her for days of footage as the investigation into the missing children approaches the 3-week mark.
It's scary, especially not knowing what happens. We definitely keep our kids a little closer to home now.
The 4- and 6-year-olds were reported missing from this home on May 2nd, launching a massive search of the woods surrounding the home. No trace has been found, and RCMP haven't ruled out the case is suspicious. This is some of the footage Scott gave police. She says RCMP major crimes officers came to her home this week, asking for everything on her 7 cameras, starting April 27th, 5 days before the kids were reported missing. 2 of Scott's neighbors were also asked to provide footage to RCMP. She says the officers also asked about her family's vehicles to rule out local traffic in the footage.
Possibly they are wondering if they didn't go missing earlier, or maybe somebody who isn't local to the area was around beforehand.
This road is the most direct path from Scott's property to the home the kids went missing from. We drove between the two places. It's about an 18-minute drive down rough dirt roads. Straight through the woods, it's about 5 kilometers.
I did mention to them that I was very happy to see them and glad that they were canvassing a little further and looking at trail cam footage. And they did respond saying that they probably should have been around earlier.
RCMP would not answer CBC's questions, including why they are seeking trail camera footage from before the disappearance and why they are identifying local vehicles. Nicholas Seguin, CBC News, Glengarry Station, Nova Scotia.
For the first time in his murder trial, a witness has placed Adam Drake in the bar where Pat Stay was stabbed. The witness says she even accompanied Drake to the bar that night. But a warning, some viewers may find details in this story disturbing. Blair Rhodes has the details.
Nicole Zakor was already out for the evening with a friend when she got an Instagram message from Adam Drake, inviting her to join him for drinks at the Harbourfront Marriott, a hotel on the Halifax waterfront. She says she and her friend joined Drake and another man in the hotel bar. The 4 of them then walked along the waterfront and ended up at the Yacht Club Social, where they took over one of the small VIP lounges at the back of the bar. The Crown had the woman watch a series of security videos from inside the bar, picking out herself, Drake, and others. She knew Pat Stay prior to that night and was able to identify him as he entered the bar and made his way to the VIP area. Drake made a couple of trips to the front entrance before Stay arrived, but the witness said she didn't know who or what he might have been looking for. Zakor says she didn't see Stay get stabbed, and she didn't see any blood. She was looking away when the commotion started. But she did see Stay on the floor, and she says she remembers seeing a punch being thrown. The Crown asked her repeatedly whether she had any concerns at any point through the night, and each time the answer was no. As the chaos escalated, the woman says she, Drake, and the other 2 fled through a back door, which brought them out into a street a block away from the front entrance. They then walked back to the Marriott. Drake went inside the hotel while the other 3 went to another bar for drinks. She told court she never would have continued with her night if she knew something had happened. Under cross-examination by Drake's lawyer, she said Drake's demeanor never changed through the evening, and she said the night had good vibes. Blair Rhodes, CBC News, Dartmouth.
Hate crimes in Halifax and across the province have risen in recent years, following a national trend. Nova Scotia had the highest rate of police-reported hate crime in Canada in 2023, but police say they are still underreported. In Halifax, there were 121 crimes reported in 2023 and 72 the year before that. That leaves Halifax with a rate of 23 incidents per 100,000 people, the fifth highest city in Canada. Police gave an update on the issue to Halifax's police board Wednesday. They say these crimes can be devastating for an individual, but have wider impacts.
Great example, again, is graffiti. On a business maybe owned by someone with a particular identity, that just doesn't affect that business owner, but everyone in the community who identifies that way, who sees that graffiti, is going to experience that fear and that erosion of trust that they are secure where they are.
Police say these cases often don't end up in court because it's hard to find out who committed the crime, or victims are worried about retaliation and don't want to move ahead with charges. Halifax police have had a hate crime unit for 3 years, and the Nova Scotia RCMP have a hate crime coordinator.
And Jay Scotland is in for Ryan Snoddon tonight, and we've got some blustery weather on the way.
Yeah, nor'easter coming.
Yeah, we don't normally talk about nor'easters in May. Typically, these are late fall, winter, early spring, not late spring. I mean, we're sniffing distance to June now, but on brand for the recent stretch of weather we've seen that's felt more like early spring, so a March or maybe early April-style storm on the way. And yeah, cooler conditions across the province again today. We're going to watch for those clouds to continue to increase this evening and overnight. Actually, overnight you'll start to see that heavier rain moving into the South Shore region. I think the heaviest of the rain will hold off until the very early morning hours for the HRM. Watch for that wind, sustained 30, gusting 60 for coastal areas, 70. 80-plus kilometers per hour possible. We'll see those strong winds into the early to mid-afternoon for the Halifax area, likely holding on through the evening hours for further more eastern areas. So as we look to parts of Cape Breton, we'll talk about a less wet wind warning in place there that could be in place through Friday night. And in terms of rainfall amounts, anywhere from 15 to 30, but locally higher amounts, like could see upwards of 30, 40 millimeters for a few spots downwind of the water. So certainly not a very late May style storm, but going to be a soaker and a windy one tomorrow for sure.
Sounds like it. Okay, Jay, we'll talk later. Thanks.
Thanks, Jay.
Prime Minister Mark Carney has officially been sworn in as the MP for the Ottawa riding of Nepean.
I do swear.
I do swear
that I will be faithful.
That I will be faithful.
And bear true allegiance.
And bear true allegiance.
To His Majesty.
To His Majesty.
King Charles III.
King Charles III.
Félicitations. Congratulations.
As well as swearing allegiance to the King, Carney said that dedication extends to all of Canada. Parliament returns next week, and King Charles will read the throne speech on Tuesday. The visit will be His Majesty's first Canadian trip as monarch.
Come Friday, we could see more than 50,000 Canada Post workers back on the picket line. There's still no deal between Canada Post and the union representing the workers. This after the mail carriers rejected the union's offer to delay a potential strike. Sophia Harris has more on how the uncertainty is impacting business.
At this greeting card and gift store, many online orders are sent by Canada Post. So another possible work stoppage would be devastating.
It's definitely going to affect our business. It's not great. It's a lot of extra work, and it's, worrisome.
Canada Post's month-long strike last year ended when its 55,000 employees were ordered back to work, so negotiations could resume. On Wednesday, the Crown Corporation made a last-ditch offer. It includes a more than 13% wage increase over 4 years and 6 personal days a year. But it also calls for the creation of part-time jobs to give the corporation more flexibility. The union followed by proposing a 2-week pause on the potential labor disruption to review the offer, saying in a statement, "We need to properly assess it. The stakes couldn't be higher." However, Canada Post said no to the proposed pause, even though it's deep in debt, having lost about $3 billion since 2018.
Why would Canada Post reject a 2-week delay?
When the financial statements are released sometime this summer for the last 12 months, I believe that we're going to see a much larger loss. And so I think that the Canada Post is realizing that delays are not going to address this problem.
If a deal isn't reached, mail delivery may stop altogether on Friday, causing further financial problems for Canada Post.
How likely do you think it is that the union will accept Canada Post's offer and we will get our mail on Friday?
I think it's unlikely.
This business professor says a big sticking point for the union, Canada Post wants to hire part-time workers to cut costs and deliver on weekends.
I think they see it, they do see it as a slippery slope to a much smaller Canada Post and a much smaller union as a consequence.
Canada Post says it's now up to the union to make the next move. The union says it's analyzing the corporation's offer and working on counter-offers. Sophia Harris, CBC News, Toronto.
The Atlantic Salmon Federation is tracking young salmon as they head out to sea, but first they have to catch them. And to do that, they've installed a special contraption in the Cheticamp River. Anna Rack has the story.
This wheel might look like a cement mixer in the middle of the Cheticamp River, but it's actually capturing young salmon, called smolts, as they head downstream. Smolts are guided into a rotating cone and into an area where the fish can wait to be picked up. The team can then measure and tag the smolts before releasing them back into the river.
We can see that two of the smaller little guys and one smolt. So I'm just going to scan that.
By tracking the fish, the Atlantic Salmon Federation hopes to better understand the health of the salmon population.
The wheel itself looks sort of intimidating, but it's actually been designed specifically for this purpose, to actually capture. And so it's actually really rather gentle. It's really unusual to have any sort of injury or mortality and things like. So it's really safe for salmon. But yeah, they're pretty cool fish. They're pretty resilient fish. They can take a lot, but of course we don't want to put anything more than we absolutely have to on them.
A local group is learning how to use the new smolt wheel. Jillian Baker is one of the people with the Cheticamp River Salmon Association working on this project.
We're looking for a lot of smolts, and we're excited to do this project over a number of years and see what we get in the coming years.
Every morning, the team takes their Zodiac out to the wheel and collects the smolts. If another fish gets caught, like this eel, it gets removed and released. The young salmon are then taken to shore. First, the fish are placed in an anesthetic bath with clove oil to put them to sleep. They take DNA and scale samples, weigh and measure the fish.
And we implant them with, it's called a PIT tag, passive integrated transponder. Basically, it's a microchip, similar to somebody might put in their dog or their cat. And when you scan a scanner over the top of it, you get the ID.
On the table, a small incision is made to place the tag inside the smolt. The cut is sterilized and then closed with powdered glue. Afterwards, the fish rests in a recovery tank until it is ready to return to the river. And hopefully, one day, be caught again and scanned to better understand the mystery of the salmon population. Anna Rack, CBC News, Cheticamp.
It's the first year that First Nations fishers in Atlantic Canada were offered 50% of the Department of Fisheries and Oceans Elver quota. But 3 Mi'kmaq communities are asserting their treaty rights to harvest elvers independently of the federal government. CBC Indigenous reporter Sissa Mohan spoke with 2 women from Sabaganagadi who harvest elvers under the community's own fisheries plan.
And they're out there trying to make money, trying to better themselves, exercising their treaty right.
I spoke with 2 fisherwomen from Sabaganagadi, which is one of 3 Mi'kmaq communities in Nova Scotia harvesting elvers under their own self-governed fisheries. The communities do this under their right to a moderate livelihood affirmed by the Peace and Friendship Treaties and upheld by the Supreme Court.
And we're no longer waiting for the government to define what is a moderate livelihood. We're exercising our rights. We're managing our people within reason. We're setting amounts, we're carrying logbooks, and we're following our management plans.
In March, DFO announced stricter regulations on the elver fishery, requiring anyone possessing, transporting, exporting, or fishing elvers to have a license. That means that fishers from her community who are caught fishing by DFO are having equipment seized or face arrest.
There are fear tactics that DFO uses, threatening, intimidation, arriving in unmarked vehicles, not having business cards, not saying their badge number, and some of them do have body cams, which is good. But like, it's another form of institutionalizing our people, and it is triggering as a nation.
The DFO says it sometimes uses undercover tactics in its investigations, but officers that aren't undercover are required to identify themselves. Amy Maloney is a treaty fisherwoman who fishes alongside Tabitha. She says she worries about safety for her community while fishing.
To be honest, I feel like we're pirates in our own communities.
There have been tensions with commercial harvesters who are upset with DFO's management of the fishery, but the treaty fishers say they're being misrepresented.
The youth and the mothers and grandmothers are out there too. And that's a very important thing for all these government agents coming at us and with guns and trying to intimidate us and stuff. Our children need to know it's a safe place for them to practice their treaty rights.
Our rights are being infringed. There's already socioeconomic gaps in the community. So financially, people, let's say on social assistance, they save up for hip waders or a dip net, a couple $100. Then they're having it taken away. And they're out there trying to make money, trying to better themselves, exercising their treaty right.
I find it's greed that is causing the conflict here, because we're moving in where there's the non-native fishermen are getting pushed back a little. Oh. I think that's where the conflict comes, because we're taking from their pot. It's our soup they're building their pot with.
The DFO says anyone who thinks they had an unprofessional interaction with an officer can report it to their local conservation and protection detachments. Sis Mohan, CBC Indigenous, Halifax.
Well, he's been the voice of sports in Cape Breton for decades. Now, Dave LeBlanc is being honored for his long career.
And he'll soon be inducted into the Cape Breton Sports Hall of Fame. Our Kyle Moore has that story.
And now the person whose impact on the Screaming Eagles was and is immeasurable.
Dave LeBlanc has been the voice inside Cape Breton's main arena since it opened in 1987. It's a voice that's recognizable and known in the community. He will soon be inducted into the Cape Breton Sports Hall of Fame.
If you miss a game, and I haven't missed too many in all those years, and someone says, walk in the building, where were you last night? You know, so you know that they're aware of what you do.
My guest is Ron McLean.
Dave LeBlanc has interviewed many people over the years in his role as a sportscaster for TV and radio, but like many in the business, it began for him at the local rink.
It all started at the old Sydney Forum, really. It was a Team Canada hockey game. They were playing Russia. And I ended up doing that was my first real gig.
Highlight of LeBlanc's career comes from May 30th, 1993, with the Cape Breton Oilers defeating the Rochester Americans 4-1 to win the first Calder Cup in team history.
There was an outstanding year, and every game was sold out here at Center 200. And then to the icing on the cake, I guess it would be to be given a Calder Cup ring from the team. You know, I was with them a long time, did a lot of work, and I really I was totally amazed that I would receive one.
When you say sports, Dave LeBlanc's name automatically comes to people's lips. It's he's an icon.
An induction ceremony will be held May 31st at Center 200. Along with LeBlanc, 3 athletes and 2 teams will be recognized.
We've had athletes that have won national championships, have gone to Olympics, to Pan Am Games, and I don't want to see what they have contributed to our history lost.
LeBlanc, who is usually the MC for the event, will be a guest this time around and will be thinking back to his long career.
I thank my family and everybody else that helped me along the way.
Kyle Moore, CBC News, Sydney.
There's a sign of spring. Apple blossoms in bloom down in Wolfville. Jay's up next with the weather forecast. Please stay with us.
The weather update is brought to you by Tourisme Gaspésie. Plan your stay in Gaspésie at tourismegaspésie.com and enjoy extraordinary moments.
And we've got Jay up next with an update on the hurricane season.
Yeah, what do you have there, Jay?
Yeah, NOAA has put out its, and this is the U.S. National Hurricane Center, its preliminary or its outlook for the 2025 hurricane season. Starts June 1st, runs till the end of November. And the outlook is for a 60% probability of an above average season. So they're expecting anywhere from 13 to 19 named storms. That is up from the average of 14 hurricanes. This is where we're looking at 6 to 10. And then of those, potentially 3 to 5 major hurricanes, which would be category 3 or higher. So this is not as intimidating of an outlook as we saw heading into the 2024 season. Always a little concerning when you see a higher expected number of hurricanes in the outlook. But I just want to really stress to folks that the number of storms doesn't always relate to the impact for a particular region. The Atlantic is big. There's a lot of coastline there. Case in point, record season is 2020. That was 30 named storms, and only one actually made impact in our region here in Nova Scotia, actually, and that was Teddy. Not too impactful of a storm, thankfully. And then as we look to 2022, that was an average to even slightly below average season, and that brought us Fiona. So don't pay attention so much to the numbers. It's always good to prepare ahead of hurricane season. And here in Atlantic Canada, where we start to get into that danger zone of when the water's warm enough that those storms can make it this far north, really coincides with the peak of hurricane season, which is late summer, early fall. That peak is the 11th of September, by the way. And that's around the time that we really start to pay attention, late August, early September, here in the Maritimes and across Atlantic Canada. So no need to get too worried about that outlook. It is just an outlook, and it doesn't always mean it will be an impactful season, even if the numbers are higher than normal. We'll start with some wind, non-tropical wind, but could be nearing tropical storm strength. In terms of those gusts, certainly as we look to St. Margaret Harbour, as we look up into as we look towards that wet wind warning, so into parts of Inverness County, this is where you could be looking at those peak gusts, potentially afternoon, maybe into the evening hours tomorrow, with that nor'easter approaching, reaching about 100 kilometers per hour. So that is possible. It was cool, quiet across the province today. We're already seeing that cloud cover developing into southern parts of the province towards Yarmouth, into the South Shore region. That's where you're going to see the first of the raindrops from this nor'easter in late May. Feels weird to be talking about nor'easters this late into spring, but you'll watch for those raindrops to arrive as we look towards midnight. Those initial showers do start to build in. I think before we get into the pre-dawn hours, so overnight into the very early morning hours, making their way into, as we look towards the Halifax area, as we look up into the valley, you'll see those showers really starting to become heavy. Early to mid-morning, there is a slight chance for some lightning, some rumbles of thunder will be possible, and that wind from the southeast to east will be quite strong as well. Could see gusts 30 to 60 kilometers per hour from sustained winds to peak gusts inland. Coastal areas 70, 80, and for the warned area that we saw into parts of Cape Breton, you could be looking at those gusts from 80 to about 100 kilometers per hour, even into the evening hours. Now, the steadier rain will be morning through early afternoon for most of mainland Nova Scotia. Eastern areas could see that linger longer. And then as we look to Saturday, mainly cloudy. Some fog will be possible Friday night into Saturday morning. The wind not as strong. The raindrops will be a bit more scattered, but we'll keep the cooler conditions in place as well, with generally cloudy, showery weather for your Saturday. Sunday not looking too great either. Not an ideal weekend. Overnight tonight, we'll see those temperatures between 3 and 5 degrees. A little cooler with a chance of some ground frost for Cape Breton, eastern areas. Daytime highs tomorrow still below seasonal, but wind and rain is going to be the real story for your Friday. Not as windy or wet, but still some showers, clouds, some fog patches possible on Saturday into Sunday as well. Taking a look at the long-range outlook, the next best bet for some real warmth, well, that won't come until mid-next week. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, those temperatures near or hopefully even above that 20-degree mark, just as Ryan's coming back.
Yeah, and the work week starts again.
Exactly.
Not exactly perfect timing. Yeah. Okay, thanks, Jay.
Thanks, Jay.
You got it.
Coming up, incidents of reported hate crimes in Halifax are on the rise. We look at some of the possible reasons why. Halifax hate crime numbers are on the rise. There were 121 hate crimes reported in 2023, up from 72 from the year before. And police say they believe the number of cases remain underreported. Peter Smith is with the Canadian Anti-Hate Network. Sir, you see the numbers across Canada now from Halifax. What would you say about the data from this province?
I mean, the numbers are obviously startling. Nobody wants to see an increase in hate crimes, especially a trend like the one that has been occurring over the past few years. Unfortunately, it's not entirely surprising. We have seen protests, actions, media, content targeting individuals, especially some of the groups indicated in the recent numbers, like South Asian, Black, and Arab individuals. So unfortunately, this I think the spike is related to a lot of the rhetoric that we've been seeing coming out from various sources.
Okay, and without doing the deep dive on the math here, the Nova Scotia numbers are somewhat representative of what you're seeing across the country in terms of trend. Would that be true?
Yes, absolutely. The sad truth is that the numbers are likely just a small fraction of the incidents that occur. There's massive issues with underreporting, as well as police pursuing these investigations.
And so why do you feel that is? Why do you think it's being underreported?
There's a few reasons. It's hard to find kind of one issue that causes this. A lot of these communities that are being affected are mistrustful of law enforcement, oftentimes due to years of over-policing and prosecutions. There's also the major issue that sometimes these incidents don't rise to the level of criminality. Other times, surveys have indicated people just don't want to be a bother, and they don't feel like their concerns will be heard. And there's also data that shows that, of the minority that do take the time to report these incidents, they're just not handled in a way that they feel is satisfactory. And they're often left waiting for long periods of time before hearing anything at all.
And so the understanding or the belief is that there's underreporting of these cases in this province and across the country. And yet we do see the number of reported cases going up. And in Nova Scotia, they're among some of the highest in the country. So if there are more cases being reported, does it follow that there tends to be more prosecutions under Canada's anti-hate laws?
Yeah, certainly. I do think that these numbers are indicative of a rise in the amount of hate crimes that we're seeing publicly. Yeah, while, like I said, they're just a small fraction of what's likely actually occurring, it doesn't mean that we can't take this rise seriously. It is also a good indicator that the police are potentially using some of the legal tools available to them more often. But ultimately, it's still just kind of missing most of the problem.
So, and perhaps this is anecdotally speaking, but are there examples of places where they are handling hate crimes in a way that is moving the needle on combating hate? I mean, what works?
I mean, it's not a magic. There's not kind of one solution to these issues, and certainly policing is just a small part of how we're going to deal with the problems of hate in Canada. There have been a number of very high-level prosecutions. Typically of people involved in groups that rise to the level of terrorism. We recently saw the conclusion of a case involving a member of the Atomwaffen division in Ontario, though that's still awaiting sentencing. Other members or other former members of that group are awaiting trials still. So yeah, I think there has been some progress made, but most of these incidents are not going to be conducted by members of an organization or a group. They're going to be street-level incidents carried out by individuals, targeting individuals, and that's ultimately what the data shows as well.
Yeah, and how much of that rise in hate can be attributed to world events?
Well, I mean, hate crime numbers are always indicative of world events. If you look at kind of the groups that are targeted specifically, very recently there's been a large surge of anti-immigration sentiment, which has largely affected the South Asian community. The fighting in Gaza affects both the Jewish and the Muslim community here in Canada, as far as leading to an increase in hate incidents. And this is kind of a trend that has borne out over the past 10 or 20 years, where current events, global events, and national events have a significant downstream impact on hate crime.
All right. We'll have to leave it there. We'll see what the numbers tell us in the future if this trend does continue. Peter Smith, good to get your thoughts on this today. Thank you very much.
No, thank you for having me.
Coming up, the man accused of killing 2 Israeli embassy staff in Washington is now facing charges of first-degree murder.
And finance ministers from G7 nations are wrapping up their 3-day summit in Banff, Alberta. Welcome back. The man accused of killing 2 Israeli embassy staff in Washington has been charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder.
Police say it happened as they were leaving an event at a Jewish museum Wednesday night. The CBC's Aaron Collins has more from the U.S. Capitol.
Witnesses say the shooting started here outside this museum just after 9. A lone gunman approaching 4 people before opening fire, leaving a young couple dead.
He reaches into his bag and pulls out a keffiyeh and says, "I did it. I did this for Gaza."
He said, "I did this." He said, "Sir, I'm unarmed."
The victims, both staffers at the Israeli embassy in Washington and reportedly just days from getting engaged.
You can't believe that your heart can break into more pieces, after everything that happened to us in this year and a half. And then it can.
31-year-old Elias Rodriguez of Chicago, Illinois, is now charged by complaint after his initial appearance before U.S. Magistrate Judge Matthew Sharbaugh.
Washington police say they quickly apprehended the alleged shooter outside the museum.
The suspect chanted, "Free, free Palestine," while in custody.
The FBI also on the case. Agents quickly deployed to search the accused's apartment in Chicago. The attack quickly condemned as an example of rising anti-Semitism around the world.
We're continuing to investigate and contact the subject's associates, his family members, and co-workers. We are also executing search warrants for his electronic devices, reviewing his social media accounts, and all of his internet postings.
These attacks come a week after Donald Trump toured the Middle East, the U.S. president securing the release of the last Israeli-American hostage in Gaza, but not visiting Israel during the trip. Today, the Trump administration quick to condemn the attack.
The hate has got to stop, and it has to stop now.
The killings come as Israel ramps up its military attacks in the Gaza Strip, an offensive condemned earlier this week by the UK, France, and Canada. In the wake of these killings, an Israeli official called out Canada's Prime Minister and the other leaders for their criticism of Israel, saying they were backing the hatred that fueled this attack. Aaron Collins, CBC News, Washington.
The Washington shooting came in the middle of diplomatic tension involving Israel and Canada, and that tension echoed in Israeli comments today. The CBC's Ashley Burke reports.
Do you have any updates to share, Minister?
Canada's new Foreign Affairs Minister says she's appalled and horrified by the killing of 2 Israeli diplomats in Washington.
My thoughts are with their friends, their families, and the broader Jewish community, not only in the United States, but here in Canada. The rise in anti-Semitism is unacceptable, and it must stop.
The Prime Minister posting online, "This hate is intolerable, and I condemn it in the strongest terms." But ministers in Israel are suggesting Canada, the UK, and France are among those to blame after calling Israel to stop expanding its military operations in Gaza and allow in more aid or else face action.
There is a direct line connecting anti-Semitic and anti-Israeli incitement to this murder. This incitement is also done by leaders and officials of many countries.
This is an absolutely outrageous and obnoxious statement made by the Israeli Foreign Minister to blame some of the best friends that Israel has across the world.
Israel's Prime Minister went on camera next, personally calling out the 3 leaders, including Mark Carney.
With a threat of sanctions against Israel, not Hamas. These 3 leaders effectively said they want Hamas to remain in power.
He's also trying to scare other countries off from criticizing Israel. There is no way that that statement is supportive of Hamas.
This all unfolding a day after this. Canada says Israeli Defense Forces fired shots in the vicinity of a delegation in the occupied West Bank that included 4 diplomats with the Canadian embassy. A Canadian official says they were shaken up. Israel says they were visiting a refugee camp and entered an unauthorized area, so soldiers fired warning shots. Canada summoned Israel's ambassador over the incident. A Canadian official tells CBC News that that meeting in Ottawa happened yesterday afternoon and conveys the gravity of the situation. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
Aid, including flour, has started reaching people in Gaza after Israel's 11-week blockade. But aid officials say it's not yet nearly enough to prevent famine. The CBC's Crystal Gamansingh reports.
Some bakeries in southern Gaza, backed by the World Food Program, fired up their ovens, baking bread for the first time in weeks. Humanitarian aid, which Israel permitted to enter Gaza Monday, was collected by UN agencies and distributed late Wednesday.
The humanitarian situation in Gaza is in dire condition. What we'll need to do is to continue to bring humanitarian aid, advocate for the crossings to be open, and make sure that the food goes to the ones mostly in need.
A UN-backed report from the IPC earlier this month said 1 in 5 people in Gaza faced starvation. Images of malnourished babies and children eating scraps pushed leaders, including those in the UK, Canada, and France, to demand Israel end its blockade on humanitarian supplies. The suffering being witnessed, says Israel's foreign minister, is because of Hamas.
Hamas started the war on October 7th, is solely responsible for the war's continuation, and is solely responsible for the suffering of Israelis and Palestinians alike.
The International Committee of the Red Cross said it got 1 truck of medical supplies through to replenish a field hospital in Rafah, but more is needed. So far, roughly 100 trucks have been allowed to enter Gaza. Several hundred entered each day during the ceasefire earlier this year. Crystal Gamansing, CBC News, London.
Many of the world's most influential economic officials and politicians wrapped up 3 days of meetings in Banff today. Many talks were on the table, but as Anis Haidari reports, tariffs weren't on the official agenda.
We had productive and frank discussions.
There's a push for sustainable economic growth from the finance ministers of the G7 as they wrap up 3 days of meetings in Alberta. And those meetings did include senior U.S. officials. Despite tariffs from the United States causing economic upheaval in recent months, Canadians say the Americans were an important part of the meetings.
Well, listen, I won't go into the specific of our discussion. We get along well. That's what I can tell you. I was delighted that Secretary Bessent came for the entirety of the G7 meeting. We had discussion on a number of issues. I can tell you the Secretary's contribution was welcomed by all the G7 colleagues.
Tariffs may have been on many people's lips, but they weren't on paper. The unanimously signed statement from the G7 finance ministers and bankers did not mention them, but clearly it's on their minds.
While it's fairly obvious that international trade will never be the same again, it's also pretty clear that there will be further negotiations.
We clearly have more work to do.
And Canada's own central banker says he's not sure Canada has a rosy economic future unless tariffs change.
Where we go from there, I think, really depends on what happens to tariffs. I know Canada is keen to sit down with the United States and work through our differences, come to an agreement. I think if we can get that clarity, we can get back to growth. Clearly, if things move in the other direction, yes, it'll be worse.
This meeting is just the first gathering of these nations in the coming weeks. Next month sees the global leaders of the G7 coming to nearby Kananaskis, including Donald Trump. Anis Haidari, CBC News, Banff.
Police say at least 2 people are confirmed dead after a private plane crashed into a San Diego neighborhood.
Our city will be supporting these families who are impacted here. They're part of the military community that makes up our city, the proud partners of our community. And we will support them for as long as it takes to make sure that we get back to good here in Tierra Sana.
It happened around 3:45 a.m. local time on Thursday during foggy weather in a densely packed area. When crews arrived, they described a scene of jet fuel spilled everywhere in a giant debris field. Authorities say about 15 homes were set on fire, as well as vehicles. 6 people were taken to hospital for injuries sustained on the ground. Officials say the plane can carry up to 10 people, though it is unclear how many were on board. At least 100 residents were forced to evacuate their homes.
Rapper Kid Cudi was at the New York court to testify in the sex trafficking trial of Sean Diddy Combs. Cudi had in the past dated Cassie Ventura, former girlfriend of Combs. Magda Gabrisalasa takes us through day 9 of the trial, but a warning, some details in this report are disturbing.
Rapper Kid Cudi, whose legal name is Scott Mescudi, took the stand during the trial of Sean Diddy Combs. He testified about his house being broken into and his car being set on fire. This after last week, Cassie Ventura, Combs' ex-girlfriend, testified that she briefly dated Mescudi in 2011. She said when Combs found out, he threatened to harm them and threatened to blow up Mescudi's car. Mescudi testified Ventura called him sounding stressed and scared. He said he picked her up and they went to a hotel when they got word that Combs and an associate were in his house. He said he even got on the phone with Combs that night. Mescudi says when he got home, he found security cameras and some things in his home had been moved, but Combs was not there. A few weeks later, he says his car was set on fire. Now, the jury was shown pictures of the damage and a Molotov cocktail in the car. By that point, Mescudi and Ventura were no longer in a relationship. Mescudi said he got together with Combs to discuss what happened. He testified that Combs said he didn't know anything about what happened to his vehicle, but Mescudi told the court he didn't believe that. When the defense cross-examined him, Mescudi said there was no damage to his home and that Combs never threatened him on the phone that night. The defense also brought up that DNA found in his vehicle was from a woman. One reporter said the jury was paying close attention to the testimony.
He's very polished. He's very relaxed, even when he's talking about some of these harrowing experiences. And we've seen, throughout this trial, and again today, jurors paying very close attention to what the witnesses are saying.
The jury also heard from a makeup artist that testified to hearing screaming between Combs and Ventura and seeing Ventura with a swollen eye and busted lip in 2010. Also earlier today, George Kaplan, Combs' former executive assistant, said he saw Combs being violent with Cassie Ventura on a private jet. Another time, he said he saw physical injuries to her face, and he claimed there was another incident where things were thrown at another girlfriend in 2015. When the defense cross-examined him, he said he didn't see any physical injuries on Ventura after the jet incident and didn't see anything hit the other girlfriend. Combs is facing 5 charges, including racketeering and sex trafficking. He has pleaded not guilty. Magda Gabrielsalasa, CBC News, Toronto.
Canada's main stock index edged higher on Thursday, helped by strength in the financial sector. Here's a look at where the markets closed. And Jay Scotland back with us one last time to wrap things up tonight weather-wise.
Yes, and it sounds like we're in for a bit of a soggy stretch.
Yeah, certainly. And the soggiest of the weather really will be for most of Nova Scotia Friday morning. As we look to tomorrow morning, the rain does become lighter. It does become a bit foggier, and it stays cool beyond that. But certainly the wettest weather, the windiest weather for most of the province will be through the morning hours. You'll start to see that wet weather. And actually, a lot of that rain will fall overnight for South Shore region. You'll actually see the showers arriving later this evening. Through the overnight hours, that heavier rain is making its way towards the HRM. Lighter showers becoming heavier for eastern mainland Nova Scotia up into Cape Breton. Late afternoon, early evening, the strongest of those winds. And this is where we could be looking at gusts potentially for western areas. Those downsloping winds out of the highlands, the sweat winds could be gusting upwards of 100 kilometers per hour. As we get into Friday night, the showers do become lighter and more scattered, but we will watch for potentially some fog patches to develop as well. So as we take a look at the HRM for tomorrow morning, heaviest of that rain into the morning through the early afternoon. And that's where we're seeing the strongest of those winds as well from the east, 30 to 40 sustained, gusting 50 to near 70 kilometers per hour. And actually beyond that possible for exposed areas. We'll watch for that temperature to stay below seasonal as well, unfortunately. But the rain does become lighter by late afternoon. That wind does begin to drop off later in the day as well. Although by 4 o'clock, do watch for some fog patches to maybe develop. So for that late commute home, the wind and the rain, less of an issue, but visibility could be an issue in some spaces, in some places as well, just with that patchy fog risk late in the day. Nor'easter, late May, not very common and certainly not very welcome, but on brand with this recent stretch of cooler than normal weather.
Yeah, so
Dominating.
true.
Sure is.
Okay, Jay, thanks so much.
Thanks, Jay.
Well, it weighs 1,100 pounds and it's 70 feet long. No, this isn't a shark or a whale.
Culinary students at Vancouver Island University have created a record-breaking dessert. Have a look at this.
It is not the Victoria Bar. It is not the Saskatoon Bar. It is not the Ottawa Bar. It is the Nanaimo Bar.
You're looking at the world's largest Nanaimo bar.
Yum.
The giant dessert was unveiled in none other than Nanaimo, British Columbia.
The recipe includes 125 kilograms of butter. That's equivalent to the weight of a baby elephant.
Wow.
It also includes 91 kilograms of icing sugar and 77 kilos of graham cracker crumbs.
The previous Guinness World Record was set in 2020 by a chocolatier from Ontario. This one nearly doubled the previous record.
Tasty treat.
Does look tasty, doesn't it? That's it for us tonight. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Good night.